think that we have to, there are other issues. I don't need your comment on those issues at this point in time. Sir, thank you very much. Did you?
Briefly, can I move the mic for a second?
Sure.
And we do open it up if you have questions for any of us.
Nothing further.
Excellent. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Your participation is very welcome. Thank you, and your honesty. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Chairman, I turn it over to you.
At this time, I'm going to open up discussion amongst the committee, amongst ourselves. If we have anything, testimony that was given before us, questions that were asked by committee members, or any residual questions or something that you thought of that you maybe that even that Mrs. McBride's out of the room that you want to say. What's first? Mrs. DiGirolamo.
Just a couple things. If I'm hearing correctly, this information was just all turned over to us. Campaign violations really aren't of this group's. It's not what this group was called for. So I understand. I'm putting it to the side. It's really not for us to determine if that is valid or not. A lot of the appointments were the mayor's to make, so they are what they are. I think the chief concern would be anything that was interviewed for that wasn't properly advertised in advance. They would be the chief. I saw 2 of them within the emails that I was able to view. It took place. Outside of that, I'm not. Else we need to address through the initial concern was hiring practices, I believe, correct? The reason for the ad hoc. So outside of that,
Chairman Mayo.
I understand.
Are you in response or?
Oh, I do. I thought you was asking a question. I apologize.
I'm not ready to turn it to you.
No.
I'm just, if it was in response to Mrs. DiGirolamo, I didn't know if that was.
No, you can respond. That's really all I had. Just a couple comments, not anything else.
Mr. Fulper?
Thank you. Mrs. DiGirolamo was correct. The original reason we had formed the ad hoc committee were the hiring and employment practices of Mayor Ellis, because that was a major concern. However, 2 complaints we have received since then caused us to expand the ad hoc committee a bit on those 2 situations, and then make my recommendations to this body.
Most investigations unfortunately do have spin-offs from the information that's gathered along the way of the process. I believe you're saying that you have some information regarding this?
I do. Again, this was brought to our attention after the newspaper article regarding the ad hoc committee. We started to get phone calls, and I did relay them to Chairman immediately. But I do believe that this would be the time we expand. However, I'm not going to use the parties' names because I believe, and I'm hoping that you'll all agree, is that these complaints be turned over to law enforcement, as I believe that this body is not, it's not within our purview, nor within our power to enforce. So, first complaint that I have was approached by someone involved in the campaign of the mayor, and they had made allegations that there were missing funds. I've been provided with text message conversations between this person and the mayor. I do think that this would be a law enforcement commission issue. I have letters to the election law enforcement. I also have the election forms, and after reviewing and seeing that during this conversation today and the conversation that had taken place earlier, the donations not being on the R1 forms or the C1 forms, not being reportable at all, I do think that this ad hoc committee should, because of the timeframes from receipt of ELEC forms, there's a huge discrepancy. There's also a discrepancy in balances, signatures, and in all of the different filed forms from those of the documents submitted originally by Mrs. McBride, who admittedly as the campaign treasurer. I would recommend that this committee send this to the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission, the State Attorney General's Office, the Warren County Prosecutor, the Division of Community Affairs Legal Division. But I don't believe that we're capable of dealing with something of this magnitude.
That's duly noted. And did you say you have a second issue?
I do. This one is a little bit easier. It is, however, I was contacted by an individual on May 8th, 2018, who states they were contracted by the mayor to clean a certain property, and he had submitted $1,000 in an attempt to circumvent council. This is their words, not mine. In an attempt to circumvent council approval, and they were allegedly told that by the mayor, which, in my opinion, and after everything that we've read, is a violation of local campaign finance. I mean, the local public contracts law. You can't break up your original invoices. You can't. It seems to me too that there's a pattern. If you take a look at a lot of the under the threshold. So I think this would be better suited for the law enforcement agencies. On a side note, and a very interesting side note, this particular contractor states that he had accompanied the mayor to a second property where the property and then they proceeded to, and the mayor had wanted him to clean that building. That job did not come about, and the contractor did not feel comfortable after watching. The recommendation for this particular complaint would be to make a report with the Phillipsburg Police Department and the Attorney General. I would also file an ethics finance board. I don't believe that this would fall under those guidelines. And again, I don't think this is you know, in closing, would you like me to do my closing comments?
Yes, sir, because I'm going to,
Okay.
only because I offered the other two of them, we're going to circle back.
No, there's no need to circle back to me. I've done enough speaking for this evening. The word retaliation has been used a lot. but I don't think that people realize why we were elected. We were elected to clean up this type of. The administration prior to that is not my concern, because I was not a councilman at that point in time. But I am a councilman now, and I do my due diligence. And I would not be doing my due diligence for the people if I didn't follow up on every complaint that was sent to me. The mayor and I are working towards a better relationship, and that's what I'm doing. The final opinion with regard to me is not one to condemn the mayor for choosing his appointees as an elected president would select his cabinet, but rather one condemning the mayor for failing to acknowledge and or follow appropriate protocol and hiring practices without creating positions, as what we heard here tonight was a reward for assisting with his campaign. The residents of Phillipsburg were promised transparency, and instead were met with an opaque representation of the municipal government at its finest. This committee is not ignorant of the fact that this type of behavior may or may not have occurred, as said before in prior administrations. And like Councilman McVeigh had said, we will not follow suit. Fairness and opportunity should be for everyone, not just those who devoted their time to ensuring that an individual was elected to a position of authority. This has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. This has everything to do with being a part of an honest, hardworking government for the people. We will succeed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fulton, on that. Up with my close. Table of organization that you created. Most of it was discussed this evening. My issue with this is not this. My issue with this is that this was done before any mention of any meeting minutes, before the discussion of recreation for our children, for our senior citizens, better traffic plans throughout the town, Section 8 housing, bum landlords that are running rampant, never mind the alleys that are in total disgrace or the drugs that are. This is first. The other stuff is second. This cost $500,000 a year. The other stuff's costing us and our citizens our quality of life. And that's why this was called. A lot of when all of us out there had children, spouses, significant others, applications into this town that just go into the crapper the second they get up there, because it's already signed, sealed, and delivered. By the testimony, still sticking with the original mindset of what we have here. You saw in full public transparency. I have a serious issue on how people were basically confidentially and even assumed the creation of jobs even before the oath of office was administered. Months and brought the brooms out and everything. We're working hard, all of us, and we're trying to work with this, and that's hard. I can't go anywhere without people asking me about this creative position. What about that? And it involves everything from the police force to boards to all the creations. And I tried to be stand up, sworn official I am to this town, and say, yeah, you know what? We are the legislative branch. We do legislative stuff, and the mayor has the the administrative department. We're supposed to work together. Frustrating when the phone rings empty on extension 302 and 303, we get the calls. Work. We're doing the administrative. We're trying to do legislative work, and it becomes very frustrating. So if you do see, inflection in my voice and stuff, those of you who know me as I'm wrapping up here, this is why. I am an idiot, or we're all idiots, or I should resign if nothing comes of this. So be it. But again, I stake my reputation on what we have here and what we've seen, and you only got what the questions were asked of Ms. McBride. There is a lot to do in this email, including of a very sensitive subject with me, because there is the start of the harassment with the town December forward, starting with deadlines from civilians. The person of a given a position, an interview, 2015, interviewed on November 28th, 2015, then started to give directions in the month of December of 2015, all while working for, if I can pronounce this right, Actress. Our information from in sealed envelopes and recommendations and things of that nature. That's my problem. I just wish everything would have waited till this morning like we did. You did your job, and you've done your job since day one. And that's one of the reasons why I went forward with this, when you stepped away from this debacle, to be quite honest with you. I don't understand how we can have interviews forward when the position was already sealed up. While there were resumes and applications, well, I don't even think it was posted correctly, as most of the jobs in this table of organization were not posted at all. I believe that's one of the reasons why one person on this table of organization left, because of the concerns of a young man that was saying, I will go to the papers with your hiring processes, and that person resigned. I asked the town clerk for paperwork regarding the confidential aid. It's all here. I looked at it. I'm not going to get in great detail on it, but I will say this. There's actually confidential information here from her former employment regarding social and names of the workers there that were turned in. As far as, I guess, this is my work, this is what I do. So I'm not sure how that confidential aid was selected by the mayor, because she's turning over confidential aid number, confidential information, social security numbers and salaries of her current employer. So, puts the ad hoc committee of our hiring and appointing practices in a wrap, which is fine. Now I must move on to Mr. Fulker's concerns regarding the local contract laws and election violation. And as you heard me state the questions to Mr. Fulker's very accurate of what had transpired. I'm not going to dwell on it. The is going to be committee. Make a recommendation to our moving the paperwork and the information in this ad hoc committee. Attorney General's Office, Consumer Affairs Legal Division, and New Jersey Election Committee. That is my motion on the table as I speak. Do I have a second? Aye. We will be preparing a recommendation to Town Council to vote on moving forward, with moving our documentation forward.
If I may, Chairman, I think it would be prevalent important for this committee to advisement to council, this is us, with Councilman Davis, the request an employment audit if the jobs were posted and some of them came back as indictable offenses. Again, I don't fix what's opposed to see someone be charged.
Employment audit first before forwarding the documentation.
Concurrent.
Any other member of the panel have any thoughts on that? Mrs. DiGirolamo?
Conservative side says to me, if we turn it over to law enforcement, won't they pay to have the audit done?
That's a good question.
Shall we wait for the findings of law enforcement? Although I must say, I am a little concerned. We waited 6 months. This is what we wasted 6 months on. Need more than what they've gotten thus far. We have, listen, we have completed a lot in 6 months' time. Like you said, on the taxpayers' money, I got news for you. This doesn't cost anything. We lose. I don't plan on losing. Chairman, I have one more thing that is what I have been seeing bothers me.
Go right ahead.
And I don't. This will. I have with me an email that was sent to Mike Swick. I will skip the most. Also, I met when I was canvassing stop at their. I do not want them to think that our reaching out to them was just to get their vote, but that Steve really cares about them. I also realize that Steve is very, very busy, but I think that ask Jose De Leon his by the town regarding marching in the Veterans Day Parade. Jose is the webmaster and committee member for the State Disabled Veterans Group. Another issue has to do with the closing of the town's health clinic. His commute back and forth to the Recovery Health Center can take up to 3 hours with the bus. He also does not like going to the Coventry Health Center, and I will not get into that because this is a private medical. I will skip that entire part out of respect for the health issue. I told her when she told me that she was a Democrat through and through, but did not know why she would vote for a Phillipsburg Democrat. Nobody had ever canvassed there before, and I was the first person remotely connected to the town or Phillipsburg politics that had ever. She expressed the issue that I heard from a couple of folks that I spoke with. Why would me? This lady's daughter was the first black cheerleader on the Phillipsburg. It would be good for Steve to her. Unfortunately, I don't have her name, but I could find it out. If those lists are still around, notes. She was an older black lady that wore an oxygen cannula. Who was on Main and Sickgrave Street who impressed answer. Outside on the stoop was that there was a Mike's Deli that, in her opinion, was keeping her alive by providing her with free food. After confirming this conversation, a bad gesture stopped in at Mike's Deli. Her concern was that would be helping folks out on Main Street like the UBZ. Make a difference. When I left the hospital in terms of her Steve and the ticket. Her only possible issue was that she had chemo on Monday, but she didn't get there to vote on Tuesday. I think I can ask at Mike's Deli for the lady's name, or maybe Steve could ask for her name when stopping in at Mike's Deli. The last place I would like Steve to stop would be Tom's Diner down on Main Street. Maybe he could have breakfast, lunch there with Mark Lutz. Tom is a friend of Mark, since Mark often eats many of his customers. My experience and the word of the business people and tradesmen I've spoken with, it has been an act of courage to express the support for the Democratic Party in this town, and they would never do so even though they wanted the Democratic my comments. Mr. Morissette is out of stone because I care about my town. Mike's Deli, it's up the it's less than 4 blocks from where you reside. The last place would be Tom's Diner. Sir, you who runs the Phillipsburg Fact Checker, the man's name, his father founded Tom. His name was not Tom, never Tom, and quite frankly, it will never be Tom. To you, everything is politics. And do you know back to Philly? There was nothing down there. They had closed. I suggest, in my the internet, you work, and then maybe 40 years I've spent here. And I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And that is all.
I ask Mr. Fulper if you have comments and recommendation. Resolve the ad hoc committee. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your attendance and your dedication to Phillipsburg.